Cole.
Okay. Hi, Eric. How are you?
How are you, mate? Doing well?
Yeah, good, thanks.
So, what do you want? Do you prefer to call or Colin?
Whatever.
Okay. All right, man. So,
I
I
call
guess
him Cole.
if we're going to start the beginning of the story, I'm a TBI survivor just like you, but as I've come to learn that they're all unique experiences. Not, we may share some kind of symptoms and elements, but all stories are, they're different. You just can't. It's hard. It's like comparing apples and oranges for the most part. And yours is
Yeah, yeah,
more the different one than I've heard.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I have a few symptoms. In mine, mainly just what's it, memory, which is always a good one. So I always forget what my symptoms are. Um, Frustration. Can't remember what the others are.
That's
That's the
why
thing with the
memory.
TBI.
That's why memory is the first one. It's the same thing with me. I start off with memory and I forget to ask the list. It's like, oh wait, it's because memory is one of the issues.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you meet the
What
doc?
do you what's that,
He said, how did you meet the doc? Kate. Or we say
Mister?
she told me.
What was that?
How
How
did
did
you meet
you
me,
meet me?
Cole?
Oh, Kate. She was recommended by the TAC, the Transport Accident Commission. They're the organisation that it's what do you call it?
They're in the
No fault.
insurance, yeah, scheme.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Put on by
you
the government.
and you were working with one of my colleagues, Katie, before me, and then when Katie changed jobs, then I started working with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, about 8 years ago, I think, or something like that.
Oh, so that's
yeah.
it's a long-standing relationship then. This is a very new thing.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's been great.
So your experience with cyber scams and TBI, does that go back to day one, 8 years ago?
That's about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the first question of always TBIs and cyber scams is, uh, I do know a little bit about cyber scams. Is they find something that works. It's like kind of like a buckshot approach to the shotgun. They spray a big web, see what works. They run with it, and then it stops working. And they move on to the next thing. It's a very rapidly changing thing, and I don't know
Mm.
how you deal with that because I found that one of my problems with my brain injury is um, adapting to change. So, I don't know how that plays a factor into your own personal life.
Yeah. No. Change isn't too bad for me. I can adapt to any sort of situation. Um, I suppose with the cyber scam though, it was very hard to break out of. That was one thing that was very difficult.
What did you get scammed out of? Tell me, do you remember how the scam ran and what did they get from you?
Um, yeah, I remember it pretty well. Um, yeah, it's pretty hard to go back into because I mean, I lost a bit of money about it and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's a very personal sort of thing when you look back at it.
Oh, I mean, nobody wants to admit that they got got. It doesn't
Mm,
have to be brain injury, but everybody, no one wants to admit that.
yeah, yeah.
I guess how did they how did they get your attention to start the conversation?
It's just on a chat site. Hi, how are you, and all that sort of stuff. And then they say, let's move to another chat site where we can get to know each other and all that sort of stuff. So then it becomes very personal what they say and do.
What kind of things did they ask you? Was this like just a place to meet friends, or like is it kind of like Facebook, or is it kind of like a dating app?
No, it was uh, we started off on Yahoo Messenger, and then I don't know where we went to. We went to somewhere else after that. Yeah, somewhere different. I can't remember. But yeah, she just or he just yeah, it was very convincing. That was all.
I mean, so this was just some random guy, like the old school chat rooms, where you connected, you started talking offline. Is because I'm trying to figure out like is what exactly it is to start the conversation. And my follow-up question would be: Is does this exist anymore? Did they kind of shut this down and move away to something else?
Um, yeah, I can't remember.
Do you want me to fill
Yeah,
in
no,
some gaps, Cole?
was that?
Would you like me to fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. Yeah, if you could, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it was we thought it was a woman that you were speaking to named Doris, and you spent a lot of time chatting with this supposed Doris person, days and nights, and felt very attached by all the conversations and the fact that this person was available kind of 24/7. So when Colin had any downtime or he's stressed at night and was, feeling bored or lonely, there was someone there who was available and accepting and very sort of laying it on thick, we'd say, with affection. And that was very compelling. And so it went on for quite a while. And then that on top of that, they had a lot of life drama, which is all the kind of lies that they use to pull at your heartstrings. So, I'm sick and I need money for food and medicine, or I'd like you to invest in some gold, and it'll be this exciting thing you'll be part of. And then it was, now I'm in jail and I need money for lawyers and for the internet to be able to keep speaking with you. So lots of different excuses for Colin. And after he'd built that trust for this supposed Doris person, Cole really wanted to help, and so would send money, and it just kind of kept going and kept racking up until at a certain point we kind of discovered what was going on.
So that showering with love actually has a term here in the United States, at least a slang one. It's called love bombing. I don't know if you know that or if they had that there.
Perfect term. It's all part of that grooming and manipulation that they use. They actually, in our research, we found out they've got kind of like playbooks. They've got scripts that the scammers use, which have examples of what to say to love bomb someone. And it's awful because they're scamming you emotionally, and it's all fake on their side. You don't know if it's a woman named Doris or a team of 5 people that move through different stages of the scam, one to hook you in, one to do the romance, one to do the money stuff. They have different teams. But for Colin and for people who are scammed, the emotions feel real. Your feelings are real, but the person on the other side is fake. And so it's so hard to come to terms with, and it's so distressing and upsetting, and it really destroys people's sense of trust in their emotions and other people. So there's the financial problems that come from losing all that money to a scammer and giving away personal information. And then there's all the emotional problems as well.
This is kind of a personal question, but I mean, if you don't want to answer it, please, don't. Did you feel like you were in love?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the unfortunate thing about it. I mean, other people who have been scammed say this exactly the same thing.
So, I mean, obviously, people with brain injuries, mine is slow processing speed. And if you give me a lot of information, like where your story, where she was giving you one story, like I'm in jail at this point, or I need money for my grandma, or whatever it was, because I can't process everything. If it's a lot of information at once, I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to believe. Is that kind of what happened with you, where a normal person would have been able to kind of like spot the scam? It's like, what is it? My dog died. What do you need this week? They might have spotted it, but is it one of those things where you're like me and you can't keep up with the process of information, so you can't make sense of what's true, and so you just take it as face value as true?
Yeah, that's true. But there's also people without brain injuries that do get scammed as well. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
they're getting the same sort of thing.
yeah, scamming is happening all over the world at really high rates. So in Australia, we're not a huge country, but we lost $2 billion to scammers last year. So it is happening at a very major scale. It's considered a major worldwide crime. It's a type of fraud. And yet anyone can get scammed, and there's a scam for everyone. But I certainly agree, Eric, that when you have a brain injury or other disability or other difficulty with processing information or language because of your education or language ability or intellect or brain injury, it is much harder to keep track of what people are saying and to weigh it all up and to judge it and step back. And I think that cognitive aspect is harder. But then I also think people with brain injury have another vulnerability, that they're often feeling a bit less than, they're often not doing as much as they'd like, or socially, or work or hobbies. And so they've got more interest when somebody approaches them. They want to connect, and they are often, by the scammer, put in positions where they can be helpful. And that can be so validating to be like, oh, I'm not the one getting help. I can be the one helping. So I'll give you money. I'll give you my, you need documents. I can help you with that. So I think that that's another area where people after an injury might be on the back foot.
One of the things, when my injury is, after I got hit by the car, my brain was like scrambled eggs. I didn't know what to do, and I was looking for help. So I was going to take help from whoever was going to offer it from. I mean, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the situation is, and I don't know what my future is. But I need somebody in the short term. So if somebody, you'll grasp at whoever's handing you the life vest, right? You'll just grab whatever arms out there. Is that kind of what happened with yours? It was somebody who showed an interest in you. It seemed like they cared, and you needed someone who cared at that moment.
Well, at the time that I was scammed, I was depressed because I was at uni and I was doing a couple of extra subjects, and some clubs had folded. I don't know if uni over there, if you have clubs and stuff that you can join, extracurricular clubs. Anyway, a couple of them had folded and collapsed. Sorry. Um, and yeah, I was depressed because I was doing these extra subjects. So I was in a bit of a state at that stage. So yeah, I was sort of in a delicate sort of area, I suppose you could call it. And that's why I needed somebody, I suppose. And I was living by myself in supported accommodation.
So, how long did this go on for before you guys figured that out?
Probably a couple of years, I suppose, maybe.
It's a long time,
Yeah.
longer than I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we see, is that these things tend to last for weeks, months, can be years. We have a bit of a metaphor for these different types of scams that we've seen. I'm also a researcher, and so we haven't spoken about that yet, but Colin and I have gone down to investigate what's going on with this, and we've found that yeah, they can last for a really long time, and so it takes a really long time to work your way out of that. We kind of think about it like, if you think about the internet as being like the ocean, when you go out on a boat ride, you're going out to have lots of fun like you do on the internet, but there's also dangerous things you need to take care of in the ocean. And these romance scams, they're kind of like a cruise ship. You kind of, once you're on, you think you're having this great time, and then when you realize that it's a scam, you're already far out to sea, and it can take a really long time to turn around and get back to safety. So it can be a really long journey, and it was for Colin and I found it. I'm a neuropsychologist, and was working with Cole before this happened on other things like memory and frustration. And I found it really hard to know how to help him. There was no guidance for what a mental health professional should do to help someone extricate from the scam, because for Colin, it was really hard to come to terms with and agree that it was a scam because the relationship felt real. And me just saying, I think this is a scam wasn't enough to really convince Colin fully. And even if he was kind of convinced in our chat, once I was gone and these people were kept messaging, he'd get pulled back into that because it was so alluring and they were so good at what they do. And they are there 24/7 to do that. So it's really, it really started us on this journey of, well, what do we do? How do I help Cole? And I don't know a lot about these scams. So we ended up investigating scams together, researching them, looking at the news articles that were coming out, speaking to researchers in the space. And at the end, we came up with a presentation about what we'd learned from Colin's experience of being scammed and my experience as a clinician trying to help someone with a scam and brain injury. And then we took that presentation to several conferences. Colin was the keynote speaker at an Australian National Brain Injury Conference and has really done an amazing job of advocacy and elevating this issue, because we realised that, at least in Australia, in the kind of brain injury field of clinicians, no one was really talking about this as this really significant risk for people with brain injury. In fact, everyone is looking at all the good sides of technology and giving the people we work with smartphones and apps to help them with organization and memory. And that's great, but no one was thinking about the other side, the safety side. So we're kind of, making a lot of headway on that now.
Yeah, once they get their hooks into you, they bleed you dry.
Sorry?
I said, once they get their hooks into you, they bleed you dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. I mean, if it was over a couple of years, what did you do when you would try to meet them? I'm assuming you wanted to meet them at some point, right?
Oh yeah, they promised that they'd come over and all that sort of stuff, but that never eventuated. So you know,
So the moment that you guys figured it out, what were your thoughts, and what was the first thing you were going to do?
or cut off contact. Of course, that was the easy. Well, that was the first thing that you wanted to do, and stop sending money. That was the second thing.
Okay. Now, what was your plan to go forward from that? I mean, is it kind of like being under a spell, or like kind of being on heroin where you can't quit cold turkey? There were some attempts for you, like, that you didn't really want to let go yet. You didn't want to believe.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It was yeah, being under spell, exactly that. And yeah, I did send them some more money after that, which yeah, a bit embarrassed about, but yeah, I did it. So yeah, and that happened, and that's where Kate and I started. Well, Kate couldn't, as she said, she couldn't find anything on the internet or anywhere about research about how to go about reversing this situation. So she put her head down and worked out all that sort of stuff, and yeah, and we come up with some tools to get around it.
well, what were some of those tools that you guys created that you had to use? Because I mean, if you had known nothing about this, you're basically starting from scratch, and you're creating the playbook that, if it works, other people are going to be following yours.
Yeah, we put up some images around the unit that I was staying in about, stop, don't do it, and all that sort of stuff. About 4 or 5 images around the place, one especially above the computer saying don't. Um,
So, since you're
um,
right, since you're writing your own treatment playbook for something that is a new phenomenon, how do you test your ideas to see what works? Or is it kind of like, I have an idea, try this, and we'll circle back in a little bit to see how it turned out?
yeah,
Because,
Kate, do you want to?
there's no
Yeah,
research. I mean, you don't have any research. You're basically doing the research as your own case study, right?
yeah. And I mean, as clinicians, we often do need to try things out with the person in front of us, because just because it worked for others or the last client doesn't mean it will work for the next person. So I actually went through probably about 6 different sort of therapeutic approaches. Tried sort of cognitive behavior therapy and like looking at different sort of coping statements. We tried like an addiction process and making a contract that Colin would sign. We tried looking at identity and thinking about a valued identity that Colin admires and how they might respond to the situation. And then we, did some sort of pictures Colin made to kind of illustrate that. And then we had this very practical strategy that I think was the most effective, where Colin and I thought about what message he needed to make him not spend the money. So we, at that point, his access to major funds had been limited, but he still had some spending money, and that's what he was sending. And so Colin and I like looked online for Google Images, and we found ones of people like with their pockets inside out saying, I'm broke, no more money, and like really good visual pictures. And then Colin, printed them out, as he said, and put them around his computer. And so we, this was a process of months and months of working through different strategies to find something that would help. And so we'd try a strategy, give it a go, come back, see how it went, and then try the next thing. And so, it was probably half a dozen different strategies before we found one that really helped. And that just helped with the money, stopping the money. And then the kind of the emotional side of this feeling real, feeling under the spell, I think that's a great term. That took much, much longer. And I think that my opinion is what really helped is creating this into a bigger project, creating this into an advocacy and public speaking project where Colin and I were preparing these presentations and presenting. And I think that lots of those presentations, that was the therapy as well, that process of talking about it, sharing, getting it off his chest, even though it's still painful, that really helped cement over the longer term, this was a scam, this wasn't real. I don't think there are quick fixes. I think it just takes time to, with heartbreak, to process those emotions.
Yeah, love is a very powerful emotion, especially when you use it as a weapon. I mean, I feel like at their core, mostly everybody, they want to be loved, they want to be wanted, and they want to be needed. Unfortunately, people who are bad actors can fill that role and use the same emotions on you.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, it's really makes me mad, and it's really devastating that people who are putting their lives back together after a significant injury and trauma are then attacked in this really pernicious, vicious, way at their emotions, and taken advantage of. It's really upsetting. So that kind of really put a fire under me to take this further and to say, well, if this has happened to Colin and we've sort of struggled to figure out how to go about this, is this happening to other people in the space, and what are their experiences like? And so that's where we started to do some research a few years ago on this topic.
Who was the first person you told about what was going on?
Who did I call?
Yeah, or not exactly that. That'll be a follow-up question. But you were working at the time, right? Or did you have friends? Did you happen to, like, if this was a woman and her name was Doris, right? Did you happen to mention her name to any of your friends or acquaintances? And then they ask any follow-up questions?
No, I wasn't working. I was a student. So yeah, and I didn't have many friends at that stage. I mean, I don't know what your experience is like, but when you're as soon as you get a disability, you come out of hospital, all your friends are sort of gone. That was my experience anyway over here. I didn't tell anybody. I told my wife. That was about it.
So then the follow-up question is, who was the first person you told that when you realized they got me?
What was that? Sorry.
Who was the first person you told about it when you realized I got scammed, I got?
That was my wife.
Okay, so you were married now. You weren't married when it started.
In supported accommodation after my accident. supported accommodation is where I don't know if you have it over there. You live in a unit or with other people or by yourself, and you have therapists provide support for you 24/7.
So, with your wife, do you have split finances? I mean, that's pretty common as couples now. Back at, like 20, 30 years ago, you just went with combined checking. But did you have your own where it wasn't combined?
Yeah, we're separated. But still, I told her anyway, because I mean, I stole a bit of money out of our joint account to pay the scammer.
I got you. I was just what kind of trying to lead to where she didn't ask you any questions about where the money went.
Well, afterwards she did. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No,
And
I was very embarrassed about it.
I think it's also important to say that for Colin and like many people, they're not necessarily the ones that come forward and say, hey, I've been scammed. It's usually other people that notice something's not right and follow up. And for Colin, he didn't think it was a scam. So it's really tricky to uncover these things because the person themselves feels like it's real, and it's other people who are suspicious and raise those suspicions, and that conversation can often go quite badly. And so that's when Colin's wife brought me in and said, I'm concerned about this, could we have a chat with Colin?
Were you able to recover any of it, or was it all gone?
All of my money. Well, I had some money that was bequested to me from a relative that had died. So yeah, all that money went.
Okay. I guess the last question I got about the actual scam itself is, if I block my brother on my phone, he has no way of talking to me because we don't talk on any other platform. Did they, if you blocked him on WhatsApp or whatever, if that was what you use, did they have multiple ways to get at you?
Um, yeah, I suppose it's a little bit more difficult these days, but I mean, back then they did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, everything you can block everybody these days, so it makes it a lot easier.
So, 8 years later, what's the most important thing you've done with your experience? What have you used it for?
That's a good question. I don't know really.
Well, I think you could talk about cyberability.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's Cyberability, our project that we've started. I mean, there's a website, cyberability.org, isn't it? Or .org.au, where you can get on and you can learn about cyber scams, pretty comprehensively learn about cyber scams. Yeah, we go and give talks now to peer support groups, and usually find in those peer support groups that there are other people that have been scammed. What else, Kate?
Yeah, we got funding from the Transport Accident Commission in Victoria. We got a really generous amount of money to do some research on this topic, and we interviewed other people with brain injury who'd been scammed and family members and clinicians to learn about this topic. And we used all of that information and the videos of real people talking about their experiences to turn that into this online training program so that people can learn from each other and learn about scams and how they operate, learn about the common scams we've found, like romance scams, but there's also scams where people just sort of call you up out of the blue and want your password or banking details to try and get into your computer or your identity information or your banking, and learn about how to stay safer online. So we call that cyberability. We've got the ABI in the middle. Colin came up with that excellent name. And we've been, it's running for almost exactly a year online. We've had people from all over the world use the online site and find it very helpful. And we're still doing some more research now to also develop a more sort of individual psychological intervention to help people adjust and cope and come to terms and break out of the spell of the scam. So I've got a doctoral student working on that project right now. And we're also designing and validating a measure of cyber safety so that you can test yourself and see what your kind of blind spots might be and what areas that you're maybe quite good at online, so that you can get a better sense of what sort of support needs you might need, or even track how you're going. If you do our training, then you can do the sort of measure again and sort of keep track. So the measure, the training that's online is free, available to anyone. You can do it at your own time. People get a certificate for completing the training as well. So there's a lot of amazing resources and research, and Cole's been a huge part of this project, and, you know, helping with designing the projects and funding and reports and presentations and advocacy. So it's turned into this huge part of Cole's life and my life as well now, from this horrid, sordid situation into something that's putting a lot of positivity out in the world now.
Have you had anyone come up to you and tell them something personal about you that normal people wouldn't share? I found that experience with my brain injury, that because I'm open and very transparent about everything that's gone on in my life, like I'll answer any single question you ask. There hasn't been one that I have said no to. So people feel like they can come up to me and share like extremely embarrassing or intimate stuff that they don't dare to tell even their husband or wives, but they'll tell me. Do you have that experience?
Just in relation to the scams, I suppose there's people that have said that, you know, they've been scammed when we've been either at peer support groups or at conferences. So yeah, there's been that. That's been a good part of the project, I suppose. It's a good thing that's come out of this is seeing other people realise that they've been scammed.
Okay. So I guess my last follow-up question is, have you collaborated with Kate on any, like, you did all the initial work on yourself and coming up with cyberability. Do you have anything next planned coming down the pipe that you guys are working on? Are you taking it further with another project?
Kate, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we have, we're applying for grants all the time to fund this work. So we have a couple just under consideration at the moment. But in the meantime, yeah, we're still pretty active with presentations and advocacy, being online. Yeah, hopefully we get some, we did actually get some funding recently from the TAC again to develop our psychological intervention. So Colin will be a big part of that, and that will be using co-design. So bringing together people with living experience of brain injury and scams to help us create a psychological intervention.
Okay. I mean, it definitely sounds like, you know, it was a good cause to take up because, you know, nobody else had done it, and you probably helped a lot more people than you probably will ever realize. And I don't know if have you.
Hope so.
Yeah, I mean, as Colin said, every time we go to a support group meeting, so Colin's also has a senior role with our state's brain injury self-advocacy group, Brain Injury Matters. And we've been to about 6 of the kind of peer support groups, and there'd be probably about 20 people there. And it feels like probably half the people there would raise their hands that they've been scammed. So it's really helpful to, I think, put it out in the open and to destigmatize it so that we can everyone needs to sort of talk about this as a regular thing, that we can arm ourselves against these scams, so that we don't feel afraid to talk about them. And if something goes wrong, that we can share that and help each other and before it sort of gets too far down the rabbit hole.
So I'm going to get you out of here on this question. What is something you learned that you think I should know that would be extremely important to me?
Sorry, what was that?
I said, to get you out of here on this question, what is something that either of you learned that you think would have a lot of value to me and I should know?
I don't know. I've been asked anything like that before, so um, no, I'm blank.
I think, Cole, you've said before things like just knowing anyone can be scammed is important, and to think before you click, to really think about what you're clicking on, whether it's a link or a text message or a new friend request, and just know that there are dodgy people out there, and you know, you have to earn someone's trust. Like if you haven't met them in real life, you don't know that they are who they say they are.
Yeah. I mean, when you're behind a keyboard, you could be anybody you want to be.
It's very easy to lie. It's very easy to steal pictures of pretty women and pretend that's who you are, or to steal pictures of a sick relative in hospital and to pretend that's your relative. It's just a click of a button. So I think knowing that scams exist is important, knowing that there are laws.
What I wanted to ask you is, has your experience of what Colin went through, has it taught you anything about your personal life? I don't know if you're married, single, with someone, but has it kind of changed the way you trusted people as in men or anything like that? Has it had a personal effect on who you are or what you the way you think like?
It's a really good question. I think for me, the main impact was that I felt really helpless, and I felt really frustrated as a clinician that I didn't have the tools to help Colin extricate from this, that that the pull, the spell was so strong, and that was really hard for me, that I felt, you know, really inadequate as a clinician because I didn't know how to help. So it also, yeah, was quite shocking, I think, to see how manipulative that these scammers, who are also human beings, how they would take advantage of someone. And as we did more research and looked at, you know, some of the investigative journalism that's been conducted in this space, there was a program that actually went to Africa. So Colin's scammer was in Africa and met some scammers and asked them why they would do this and if they understood the impact it has on people. And it was very interesting that there was some, I guess, racial aspects to this as well, that they felt kind of, you know, white people could, you know, to sort of, you know, could take the hit and sort of deserve to be attacked in a way as well. So that
Is
was
it just
quite
is it just a job to those people? They just see it as a job, like you do your job. Not that they're hurting people. They don't even think of that. Has never crossed their minds. Like, this is just a means to an end. Is it
I think
that?
there's little layers of this. So there's people who are just doing this on their own. There are people in small groups, and then there are organized crime syndicates. So there was a bust on a call center in Malaysia that had 400 staff doing scams. This is a multi-billion-dollar worldwide crime activity. So they are big businesses, and for some people it's a job, and for some people it's you know, it was kind of revenge, a vendetta even. And some people it's, you know, getting their kicks. So, you know, like with anything, with any crime, there's lots of reasons probably why people do it. And it's a very, it's, you know, not an area I would know too much about. There's not that much research on these as people as criminals, but we know they're very well resourced financially, and they have big staffing, and you know, compared, you know, billions and billions of dollars. That's more than our government has to spend to defend us. So it's really tapped into, from this Colin and I's experience, this just worldwide issue that hopefully we can bring some attention to in not only brain injury, but just our general communities with our families and friends, that where, you know, everyone here gets multiple phone calls a day from scammers. It's quite relentless. There's, you know, your junk email inbox. There's in the news, actually, in the last 3 weeks, there's our major phone provider was hacked of almost 10 million people's accounts. Their personal details have been leaked. So there's a major focus on this at the moment. So I feel in some way that it's good timing that we have these resources ready to go to help people. And now we just want to get them out there so that people are more protected and more aware of that they need to protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like if your situations were any different, could you fall in for something like the same routine that he did?
I mean, I think maybe not that scam, but there are scams that approach academics specifically with fake conferences and fake journal articles. So there's no one that is immune to a scam. There's just a different scam for it that we're each vulnerable to. So for Colin, that romance scam, he was vulnerable to that because of, feeling lonely and depressed. And for others, it's like you're in a rush and you're not thinking clearly. And so, I've interviewed people that are businessmen that have got a phone call and they say it's the tax organization and that they owe taxes and that they have to pay them in iTunes gift cards. And in the light of day, that sounds ridiculous. And how would you fall for that? Governments don't ask you to pay in gift cards. But he was driving clients for 7 hours. He was tired. He was stressed. He was worried that he was behind in his taxes and he just got caught up. And they're so skilled that they kept him on the phone for 4 hours while he went to different supermarkets and got all these iTunes cards. So, yeah, there's just there's a lot of different scams out there. As you say, they keep changing them. They're very dynamic. So it's just I think just having a healthy level of suspicion is important.
With your experience with people who have got scams, when they finally realize that none of this is real, none of it, does it kind of shatter their reality a little bit?
Yeah, it sure can. We've had people, as you say, that, when that finally come to terms with the fact that they were hoodwinked, they were scammed, they were taken advantage of, they can lose trust in not just the scammer, but in everyone. We've had a guy who he was scammed by a woman, and so he lost trust in women, including his daughters, who were his main support. And so that's had really huge impact on him.
I guess this is a good last question to ask. Any of the scammers that you guys have met, in Africa, wherever they may be, have any of them apologized and said they're sorry for it, or have none of them?
Well, typically they just sort of persist for a while and asking for more money. And if you stop giving money, eventually they'll go away. Sometimes they kind of transfer you to another team that's going to just be involved with asking for money. But I've never heard of any scammer apologizing. That, yeah, it's very hard for people to get any kind of resolution and closure, even from financially or legally. It's very unsatisfying. And that's why there's this huge emotional cost and need for support after people have been scammed.
Well, I mean, this was great. I really appreciate you coming on. It was, when I started this, it's not a conversation I ever anticipated having about TBIs, or it was nothing on my, on my list of goals. So it was definitely good for me. I learned stuff about me and things that I see in myself that I saw in Colin.
Yeah, I
I
think
get that a
it's a
lot.
very common story. It's very, very common, unfortunately. I'm glad you could take something away from it and hopefully, help you to be a bit more alert like we all should be. And also that if something goes wrong, that to just reach out to someone you trust and talk about it. And talk about it before before you've gone too far. If you're not sure if something's real or not, to check it out with someone.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's different to look at it in hindsight, or even to look at it from an outsider's perspective. And when they say you didn't you didn't see this, like this didn't make sense to you, but once they've got you under that spell, they could basically tell you anything, and there's no way you're really getting out of it, only with outside intervention or the fact that you have no money left at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks for joining me. I'll let you get about your day. Hope you have a good week.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. I really enjoyed it.
Bye.